Hello, everyone. I'm Lindsay Reiser. Welcome to the Daily Report. President Trump tonight addressing the nation from the White House in his speech looking back on the first 11 months of his second term. The president hit on what he considers to be his biggest achievements thus far, among them signing his tax and spending bill into law, cracking down on immigration, and helping broker a ceasefire in Gaza. He also spent a lot of his time drawing comparisons with his predecessor, repeatedly criticizing the Biden administration, particularly on the economy, immigration, and the issue of affordability.
America great again. Tonight, after 11 months, our border is secure. Inflation is stopped. Wages are up. Prices are down. Our nation is strong. America is respected. And our country is back, stronger than ever before. We're poised for an economic boom, the likes of which the world has never seen. Soon we will host the World Cup and the Olympics, both of which I got. But most importantly, we will celebrate the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. There could be no more fitting tribute to this epic milestone than to complete the comeback of America that began just 1 year ago. When the world looks at us next year, let them see a nation that is loyal to its citizens, faithful to its workers, confident to its identity, certain to its destiny, and the envy of the entire globe. We are respected again like we have never been respected before. To each and every one of you, have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. God bless you all.
Let's bring in our political panel for analysis, Joel Payne and Kevin Sheridan. Joel is a CBS News political contributor and chief communications officer for Move On, and Kevin is a Republican strategist and former RNC spokesperson. Kevin, let's go ahead and start with you. The president certainly seemed to strike a tone that was in direct contrast to the backdrop behind him, which was merry and bright. Do you think that the content of his speech will win over more than just his base?
Yeah, it was a Christmas State of the Union, if you will. It actually sounded like the final State of the Union, the first half of the final State of the Union that he gave in his first term, where he laid out all of his accomplishments and he made the argument for why America's in a much better place than it was at that time 4 years ago. Now, 11 months later, after he got into office, obviously he's got a lot of problems with the affordability issue, which is really the inflation issue that started way before he got into office. You could cite the last month of 3%, and now it's 3%. But it's the affordability is it compounds on itself, and obviously that is what people are feeling. Now, he does have an impressive list of accomplishments overseas. He's done a lot. Got the hostages out. He's settled wars. But he's got his big hope now is that the deregulation combined with the big, beautiful bill, the tax cuts on all the middle-class tax cuts that he's done will actually, and all the foreign direct investment that he has, the trillions of dollars of it that he has said are coming back, that actually provides jobs, that actually provides factory workers and, a real difference in people's lives. So I think he was laying it all on the line right now. He obviously feels some pressure. He wants to keep the coalition together. He wants Republicans to stay in Congress that are thinking of retiring, and that's what he did tonight.
So let's talk about that pressure, Joel. I mean, per Kevin's point, inflation year over year, 3% as of September. Wages increasing at 3.5%. The president said wages are rising faster than inflation. I mean, that's a little bit of breathing room, but not a ton. How do you see Democrats framing this affordability issue heading into the midterms?
Yeah, Lindsay, I'm really struggling to wrap my head around what we just watched. I got to be honest with you. That felt like the kind of the drivel of a person who was not focused, did not remember why he was sent to the White House by millions and millions of Americans. He couldn't keep the thread on a conversation, just like he hasn't been able to keep the thread on his presidency. That felt like I was being screamed at in all caps for about 15 minutes. And people are hurting in this country, Lindsay. I mean, people there are record lines at food shelters. There are people who cannot make ends meet, and they're depending on this man to make their life better. And it seems like he is not locked in on what they care about. And it's not just what I'm saying, it's what they're saying to us. It's what they're saying in CBS polling, it's what they're saying in other public polling, and it's also what the American people are doing when they are checking out of this. It's the same old, tired, warmed over MAGA drivel that we've heard for 10 years. And the American people want someone who is focused on making their life more affordable, who is not focused on political retribution, who's not focused on building ballrooms, who's not focused on putting plaques up that take shots at his predecessors. They just want a president to make their life better. And the American people who watched that speech tonight have to be furious with what they sent to Washington.
So, Kevin, Joel is usually quite measured. This is the most excited that I've seen him in a very long time. And I do want to put up some polling, the CBS polling that he was talking about, because he's right that people are feeling the pinch. I got the sense of 63% saying that they think that the condition of the U.S. economy is bad. I mean, per your previous comments, I got the sense that you're sort of deciphering Trump's comments to say, stick with me, help is coming. But do you want to respond to what Joel was saying?
Well, I don't think he won over Joel, that's for sure. And I don't think he could. But look, there are a lot of hurting people in this country. I think we all recognize that. Trump is not Bill Clinton in the I feel your pain. He's the more evangelical, we're going to get through this because everything's going to get better and everything's great. And, you know, he talks everything up. That's just the way his real estate mind works. And that's how he's always talked.
But everything's not great.
But obviously, the economy is the big issue. That's what we have to address as Republicans. And they made their bet on the big, beautiful bill. They put everything into that. Deregulation also helps, bringing foreign direct investment back. Reverse immigration could change things a lot for people. If those things happen and those things start taking shape in 2026, that's the only hope Republicans have for staying in Congress in the midterms, because it's really a results-driven thing. You can't talk up the economy. You can't change people's daily lives. You know, they know what their pocketbooks look like, and the proof will be in the pudding with the results.
Yeah, I mean, hang on, Joel. Even his comment that Thanksgiving turkey was down 33%, it was an exaggeration. Joel, you can please comment what you want. And I also want to ask you about the immigration piece, because the president blamed a lot of American woes on illegal immigration. He said, in his opinion, it was the Biden presidency's worst fumble. And he brought up again Somalians in Minnesota stealing millions. This is a fraud investigation, painting an entire people and population with this broad brush. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's his best issue. He's only 10 points underwater on that. He's 30 points underwater on the economy. So I suppose that's his best shot that he's got right now to scare people into giving him a little bit more time to run his con. But, look, let me, I get it, right? I'm the Democrat, so people expect me to not say nice things about Donald Trump. Let me fan this out and make a bigger point. We spent 4 years, I spent a lot of time here on CBS and all of our CBS family and networks talking about Joe Biden whistling past the graveyard, not recognizing the economy that the American people are experiencing, talking past it, not showing the type of understanding and the type of relation to what their everyday experience was. We're seeing the same thing here. And it's interesting. I'm curious how long Republicans, the elected Republican class, is going to stick with Donald Trump. We're already seeing fractures now, whether it's a Marjorie Taylor Greene, a Thomas Massey. We're seeing Republicans now break away on the ACA premiums. In the House today, we saw 4 join with Democrats to go and try to get Hakeem Jeffries' package passed. We're seeing Republicans feel more permission to step away from Donald Trump because this presidency is not going well. The American people are not experiencing it well. And I think what's interesting to me as someone who is analyzing this from afar is the same thing that Joe Biden presented to the American people that the American people said no to, they're getting from Donald Trump. And Donald Trump believed that the American people sent him with a mandate because they liked what he said, as opposed that they didn't like what the other guy said. And I think he misread what the American people told him. He thinks the American people loved every single thing that came out of his mouth, and they didn't. They just didn't have confidence and faith in Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, who was his stand-in, at the time that they had an opportunity for a binary choice. So I think that that's fascinating that the same complaints we had about Joe Biden, the same presidential failings that the American people were unhappy about for years in the Biden presidency, they're getting the same thing from Donald Trump.
Let's go ahead and play a little bit of the address and have both of you react.
11 months ago, I inherited a mess, and I'm fixing it. When I took office, inflation was the worst in 48 years, and some would say in the history of our country, which caused prices to be higher than ever before, making life unaffordable for millions and millions of Americans. This happened during a Democrat administration, and it's when we first began hearing the word affordability. Our border was open, and because of this, our country was being invaded by an army of 25 million people, many who came from prisons and jails, mental institutions, and insane asylums. They were drug dealers, gang members, and even 11,888 murderers, more than 50% of whom killed more than one person. This is what the Biden administration allowed to happen to our country, and it can never be allowed to happen again. For the last 4 years, the United States was ruled by politicians who fought only for insiders, illegal aliens, career criminals, corporate lobbyists, prisoners, terrorists, and above all, foreign nations, which took advantage of us at levels never seen before.
All right, so let's have both of you react. Kevin first, then Joel.
Yeah, I mean, that's populism. Joel didn't like it. I get it, but that's how he got elected. He's underwater. Obviously, we can all read the polls. We all know people are not super happy with the situation of the economy and other things. But look, Democrats are 55 points underwater right now. So the Democratic brand is also in the tank.
Kevin, it kind of feels like your response is just, that's Trump.
I mean, that was very Trumpy tonight. I mean, that was as Trump as you can get. We didn't know what we were going to get tonight. We thought it might be on Venezuela. We didn't know if he was going to announce any kind of new policies, but he just recapped the year. And I think it's a two-part message. It's a message to try to change the narrative to, hey, we do have accomplishments. You're not talking about any of them now. You're talking only about this one issue of affordability, which is actually inflation that was created in the last administration, not in his. And that is where he was trying to push the conversation. And, we'll see if it works. I think, it's an attempt. I've been calling on him to do an Oval Office address. I think it would be a great thing. So he did it from the White House. But, you can always call that bully pulpit, and you can always try to change the conversation. And that's what he did tonight.
Joel, did he?
Well, you might be surprised, Lindsay. I don't think he did. Look, look, governing is hard, and no one should ever underestimate the difficulty of running an administration, of being the president. I get the sense that Donald Trump thinks it's an easy job, and I think the American people have had two opportunities to see how he performs at this job that he thinks is easy, and I think they're finding out that it's not that easy. And I think Donald Trump is finding that out, and I think the American people are finding out it's not that easy. It's complicated. The problems that come before a president are complex. Trying to maybe wrap this all up. Kevin's right. This was a resuscitation of the first year of the Trump presidency. And I'd call it the 37% speech, because it was a speech that resuscitated what 30% of the American people like. This is not a popular president. This is not a popular presidency. And I don't think we've hit the floor yet. I heard Anthony's point earlier that he made before the speech around the fact that his support was still strong with Republicans. I broadly agree with that. I do think if you look deeper into some of those numbers and some polling that I've seen, private and public, that's available, he actually is starting to see some softening with intensity of support with Republicans, with people who call themselves MAGA. That is starting to show. I think Anthony's point is right, that the Republican number is the one to keep an eye on with Trump, because that's the real bottom falling out. But I do think you're starting to see some weakness there. So this is great if he wants to own the libs and wants to go and, essentially dismiss the 70 plus million people who didn't vote for him and the independents who either stayed at home or maybe took a shot on him. But his own base is starting to be hurt by the things that he's doing. And you don't have to take my word for it. Just look at public opinion polling. And I don't think that this speech moves the needle for him meaningfully in the other direction.
We'll have to leave it there today, but I look forward to having many more conversations with you both in the new year. Joel Payne and Kevin Sheridan, thank you. CBS News Chief White House correspondent Nancy Cortez joins us now. Nancy, I heard you talking to Nora in the special report, talking about those checks going out to military members. What else stood out to you?
What stood out to me, Lindsay, was first, just the very stark terms in which he described his predecessors. Obviously, there's no love lost from President Trump towards his predecessor, Joe Biden. He castigates him and criticizes him all the time. But those criticisms were even more dramatic tonight. Just to give you a flavor, he said that he had taken on a system of corruption, Trump did, that crushed the dreams of the American people. He said that his predecessors fought for insiders and criminals, decimated your hard-earned savings, and indoctrinated your children with hate for America. So he really came out swinging at his predecessor tonight, and that was notable. He also made a very aggressive case that he was improving the economy, and he pointed to energy prices, he pointed to gas prices, but some of the statistics that he relied on were somewhat misleading. For example, he argued that gas is down to $2.50 a gallon in much of the country. Gas is actually the average for a gallon of gas right now throughout the U.S. is somewhere between $2.90 and $3 a gallon, which is certainly down from when President Trump took office, but maybe by about 10 to 15 cents, not 60 to 65 cents like he was indicating. He did argue that some of the policies that he has put in place are going to be helpful in the future. He made the case that some of his moves on prescription drugs are going to bring healthcare costs down. He argued that his tariffs are going to lead to more products being made in America. And, basically time will tell whether those promises are borne out. But yes, the biggest surprise of the speech was that big warrior dividend, as he described it, these $1,776 checks that are going out to about 1.5 million service members for the 250th birthday of the United States. He said the checks are already going out. We'll obviously do a little more fact-finding on that, find out when they started to go out and whether they actually are going to arrive in the mailboxes of 1.5 million service members right before the holidays, which obviously would be a welcome development for a lot of people who put their lives on the line for the United States.
Paid for by tariffs, right, Nancy?
Yes, and he argued that tariff revenue is going to be bringing down all kinds of taxes on the American people. Again, that is sort of a wait-and-see promise. He has made the case that tariff revenue is going to bring down all kinds of costs that would, if put into place, would sort of outstrip the amount of tariff revenue that has actually come into the country so far. So we'll have to wait and see whether everything that he has promised comes to pass, including these $2,000 rebate checks for low and middle income Americans that he has floated as a possibility in the past.
And you mentioned Trump RX launching in the new year as well. All right, so we've talked about food prices in this program, gas prices that were, his numbers were inflated. He inflated the number of migrants who entered the country illegally under the Biden administration. What else did you notice? I mean, one thing that I noticed was he said he settled 8 wars in 10 months. What do you gather from that?
That's something he likes to talk about. He likes to argue that he has solved more wars than any other president in history. There, too, the numbers are somewhat inflated. Yes, there are some very important cases where he has brought the parties to the table to hammer out a ceasefire or a peace agreement. In some cases, however, there wasn't actually a war taking place in the first place. There were some low-grade hostilities, some long-time conflict, not actually a war. And then in some cases, he has inflated his role in the peace agreement. In the case of India and Pakistan, for example, leaders of those countries said actually President Trump didn't really have much to do with it. But nevertheless, this is a stat that he has latched onto, even as he acknowledges that the biggest conflict that he was hoping to solve and promised to solve on day one of his presidency still eludes him, and that is the war between Russia and Ukraine.
Okay, Nancy Cortez, thank you so much. Late night at the White House for you.